Hey everybody, Big Toad here, and welcome to my studio. In this video, volume 4 of painting in Idaho, Butte, and rolling foothills, we're going to focus on the midground. I'm going to do some midground painting, and I'm going to take the chroma down on that and bring in some nice low, dull yellows and put in some nice dull bluish greens to create the illusion of distant patches of sagebrush and build some contour there. And I want to do that whole midground in this video so I can move on to the foreground. I'm not going to do everything in the midground. I want to lay out the color, I want to lay out some contour, and I reserve the opportunity to go back in and make changes to that later. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So already I'd laid in some light colors and it's not what I wanted. I needed some dark, very low chroma color here. So dark colors but dull is what I'm after. And so the hill I'm working on now is the furthest foothill back, so it's going to be one of the darkest ones. And mainly what I'm using there is some Naples yellow, a little bit of alizarin crimson, and I've got a little bit of ultramarine blue mixed in there, not much. And then I have that gray that I used on the mountain, and I mixed that in there to really dull that down so I get this nice dark color. The ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson help bring the chroma down, help dull that color because they're opposite of the Naples yellow. So I'm trying to create the illusion of distant foothills that have bled off and faded out into the distance. I don't want too much contrast between that foothill and the mountain. I don't want it to feel too stark of a change. Already we're changing colors from the deep dark gray purples color into this yellowish color that's to represent foothills. So I don't want the values to be too far off. Another important point is the brushwork along the edge, that transition point between the mountain and the foothill. You'll see me mixing and rolling the brush and trying to make it a soft edge. I don't want a sharp edge in any of this background work, so I'm working on a soft edge here. And so you'll see me kind of allowing the colors to blend together, to fade into one another. And that's really important. The further the colors get away in the distance, the more there's it's difficult to see the edges, and so you want to replicate that in your painting. Also, sharp edges draw the eye, and this is background work. This is that far work, and I'm transitioning between the background to the midground, so I don't want that to be a harsh line there. So I'm trying to soften that up, and you'll see that along the edge here all the way across. It's something you should be focused on in your paintings as well, understanding that the distance those edges fade, and you can already tell where that transition between the mountain and that deeper dark distant foothill is feeling better, feels better. It's smoother because of how the colors fade into each other. So you can see me as I begin to fade these other foothills more into the mountain, trying to soften those edges somewhat, reshape the foothills a little bit. I want the eye to not focus there, so I want to break that up as much as possible so your eye doesn't get hung up. And so I'm using that gray from the mountain that I had left over, and I'm feathering that into the foothill. I'm using a number 6 natural bristled brush for this, and I'm going to go along the edge and really soften that up all the way down. I'm also going to go in, you'll see me here soon, start bringing in a little tinge of purple into that transition zone as a color to kind of, I don't know, liven up the transition. And so when you look at the transition zone, you're not focused on the foothill, you're not focused on the mountain so much, but you'll notice the purples and it'll draw your eye along it with just a slightest amount of purple. You may not hardly notice it at this point in the painting yet. I may or may not do more or less of that, may put some more purple highlights up in the mountains. That's something that I will have to decide as the painting matures a little more. So moving to the hill in front of that darkest one there, I'm coming in with a little lighter color because I need to make contrast between this hill and the one behind it. And with multiple layers of hills in this midground, I have to be careful to show differentiation between the hills, maybe a little bit of contrast and maybe bringing the chroma up just a smidge. But I need to be careful of that because I don't want to bring the chroma up too fast or I won't have any room left for color and chroma manipulation in the foreground. So also you'll see that I really soften the edge between the furthest hill and the closer one there I'm working on with that kind of that broken up and faded edge, that soft edge. It gives the illusion of distance. And now you'll see me with the brush strokes. I'm using various different colors in the spectrum of this kind of yellowish color. You can see a little bit of yellow in there. That's that Naples yellow kind of showing through. And that's what I'm after. That's why I brought in this Naples yellow. I'm bringing a little gray down from the mountain as I pick up on the edge and putting some highlights in to create contour. And I'll work a little bit more with contour as I move forward with this. Now with that foothill kind of laid in, now I come in with just a little bit darker. It's not quite as dark as what I have in that furthest hill, but I lighten that color up for the furthest hill a little bit just to create some contour and shape within this hill in this footground. These hills have little ridges themselves and dark patches in shadows, and I also have patches of sagebrush in them. As you'll notice when I show the videos of me driving down the road, lots of sagebrush. And those are going to show up a little darker in the distance. And at this distance, they'll have a bluish, greenish hue to them. So I'll be putting some of that in later. But you see, I'm creating contour and life and vitality to this mountain with just very subtle changes in the color to create shape and contour. Now you'll see me come in with a slightly darker hue again. Again, now I created that little ridge line there, shadow along the mountain as it's coming down to the right, or that's a foothill, I mean. And I'm going to bring in some more of that darker color to kind of create shapes and shadows on the hillside. And again, I want to make these edges soft. So you'll see me pulling the brush around and softening the edges of those contours because I don't want them to be harsh at this distance at all. Again, that's one of the keys to creating distance is the softer edges, especially on something like a foothill. You want to create the illusion of shadow and shape so that the mind can decide what it sees. Is it seeing a shadow? Is it seeing a darker patch of grasses? Is it seeing sagebrush? Let the viewer's mind and eye make of it what it will. And you see even here, I'm going to bring in now some light color and just going to break up the dark spots I made a little bit to show maybe some light hitting that and giving it some more contour and life. And you see, I'm not being real precise. I'm just kind of rolling that brush around through there. Now bring some dark color into this other big patch of area. Again, look at that nice little kind of hill ridge line I brought down there. And now I decided, hey, I need some soft color up in that furthest spot to create some texture, some rolling hills back there. So again, it's subtle. And I will, as I move through the painting, I will maybe make some changes here and there, like I'm doing there to create a little darker, reshape that hill a little bit. And as you paint and you progress through your painting, you'll make adjustments in order to complement other parts of it. I'm not trying to speed paint this. I'm not trying to do a painting in an hour. I wanted to reserve the right to change anything and everything as I need it to improve the composition and the overall look and feel of my painting. Right now, I'm trying to create the illusion of distant hills, and I think I'm achieving that for the moment. One of the tricks in doing this part of the painting is not getting into the trap of overworking. When you're painting, you're up really close, and you can get caught up in trying to create details where detail is not needed. So try not to overwork and rework too much. What I'm doing here is I'm laying down the base color, and then I'm looking for opportunities to create texture. And that's what I'm reworking. Try not to rework texture in one place too much. If I can do it the first time and just leave it, that's great. But then I'll step back and look, do I need to add more color here? There are lighten something, darken something. But I'm not trying to be satisfied with it at this point. I'm just trying to get it somewhere so I could see contour and texture. Because if I start painting to try to satisfy myself, then what's going to happen is I'm going to overwork it. Because one of the things about the painter's eye is it will always find something else to do in your painting. Your painting, while you're painting it, will never feel done. So you have to quit some of these things before you feel done, or you'll just overwork. That's the key to not overworking. Stop before you're done. Also, if you get frustrated and you stop painting on that section, move away from it. And that's why it's good sometimes to bounce around. If you feel like, oh man, this is terrible, move someplace else. If you try to work too hard on fixing it, that's when you overwork it. So get in the habit of jumping around when you need to, and that'll help you from overworking things. Now take a moment and look at this photograph I've got here. I zoomed really in on the foothills, and you can see the foothills. It's really close to the colors I'm using in my foothills. Now my mountains aren't quite as dark, but the fact that they're not quite as dark is okay. But you'll notice these foothills. If you look at them, you see various shades of that Naples yellow, really grayed down and dulled. You'll see darker and lighter. You can just see hints of little green in there as well. And so that's what I'm trying to create here in my foothills, the similar type of look and feel to that. So both the mountain and the foothills are a little brighter than the photo, but that's okay. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to go quite as dark as the photo, but I think I've kept the values lined up well, and I think I'm settled on to some good color that is close to it. Again, it's the impression I'm after here. So I'm putting in some lighter highlights here now. I want to break up some of those larger patches of dark, reestablish the difference between the closer and the further hill there. I realized I'd wiped that out, and I'm liking what I'm doing here. I think I'm making some nice progress with the foothills. I think I got some good colors. I'm really happy with the colors I'm using, and so I just have to work out the rest of the foothills. Now, when I start putting in this next hill, I want to bring the chroma up just a little bit. In other words, make it just a little brighter because I don't want to go lighter so much in color, but I need to create contrast between this hill and the hill behind it. So you'll see me start to bring in some brighter colors to break that up. And so contrast is very important in your painting. And it's easy to contrast two different colors. If you got a red and a yellow, well, you can contrast those. It's going to stand out. You can also contrast the value, lighter and darker colors. But in this case, I can't contrast the color too much. I can't contrast the value too much. I can be a little bit lighter, but I also need to be a little bit warmer. So the combination of the contrast between a little bit lighter and a little bit brighter is what's going to pull this hill a little bit forward. Again, I have to make it subtle but noticeable. Subtle, so I don't want to pull either one of them too much because I still have a lot of foreground to do, and I don't want to dip into my foreground values and chroma too much. So you can see it's a little brighter, a little more chroma in there. You can see a little bit more yellow ochre in there, just making it glow just a little bit more at that layer. And that's just a subtle contrast that I'm after. All right, let's fast forward as I finish blocking this in with just a little higher contrast or higher chroma and a little brighter color. Now, once I get that done, then I start putting in some contour. Again, I'm coming in with just a little higher chroma than what I've used in the back, just added a little more yellow ochre to the darker color, but I can start pulling in contour and shape and bringing that that foothill to life now. And there you see I'm coming in with some yellow ochre to kind of highlight a bright spot on top of the hill, maybe where the sun's hitting a little brighter. And that's what I can do as I move forward a little bit. I can use the higher chroma to create some nice contrast to build contour and make this hill seem a little more alive than the ones behind it because it's a little bit closer. And that's the trick, is bringing this one out just a little bit closer, but not too much closer, so I don't dip into my foreground colors too much. All right, let's fast forward through this as I began to use little darker colors to create contour and shape to this foothill. And this is kind of a fun part. I like doing this. I could have blocked in everything below it first in the foreground, but I don't see any need for that because I am going to use a little higher chroma down there. So I will adjust my chromas going forward. And what I'm doing here is backwards from what you'll see a lot of painters do. I started with my light colors, then put in some darks, then I'm coming back in with my light colors to create contour and shape. And because I'm massaging this as I go along. I'm going by feel, not copying something, going by feel. And so it allows me to jump back and forth between lights and darks. All right, now look what I'm doing here. I'm putting in some yellow ochre and to put in some brighter, higher chroma highlights. So just subtle ones here. I'm a little closer in this hill, and so I can create the illusion of closeness by using little patches of higher chroma so that I'm dipping into some of my higher chroma that's going to be used in the foreground in order to create emphasis without overdoing it. That's the key. I don't want to put too much. Putting them on the top of the hills, maybe where the sunlight's glistening off the hills. And I see it creates nice, beautiful contrast between this hill and the one in the back. You can see it pushing the hill behind it back and pulling this forward. Again, over here, applying some yellow ochre, almost pure. It is mixing a little bit with the color that's there, and that's what I'm doing. If it goes on too strong, I just pull it around a little bit and create the contour. Again, I'm using very careful little strokes. This is a small, natural bristle brush, flat. I believe it's like a 4 that I'm using. Just subtly putting in some color here. See, if it goes on a little dark, I just soften it up a little bit, but I still leave that chroma there and that highlight there. I think it's really adding something to this painting. It makes some areas pop. But again, be sparing with it because you're still further back. And so what I'm doing is I'm stealing some of the higher chroma that I know I'm going to use in the foreground and putting little highlights in my midground to kind of tie the two. So my midground, if you'll think about it like this, it has it ties the background and the foreground together. And so I'm going to steal from both. I'm going to try to lay it in the middle with my values, with my chromas. I'm going to try to keep it in the middle between the background and the foreground, but I'm also going to bring in a little bit of the background color and dullness into the midground, and I'm going to bring in some of the the foreground chroma and highlights and brightness into it to give that, to smooth out that contrast between it. And by sharing the colors, the values, the chromas between the foreground and the midground and the background and the midground, it allows the eye to transition more smoothly from the foreground into the background and then back again, because it's not too harsh, because the eye is not being shocked. It's allowing it to smoothly flow, and that's what I'm trying to create. I want the eye, because this is such a large painting, I want the viewer's eye to move through the painting and around the painting and back in this way and that way, following contours, following shades, following angles. And so if I make anything too harsh, I'm liable to stick the eyeball. And I want the viewer to be trapped in the painting, but not stuck in one place, because it's too big to be stuck in one place. You can bring a harsh focal point into a smaller painting where the eye is nailed there and kind of stays with a little bit of travel, because it's not a big painting. But on a large painting, you want to create an adventure for the viewer to travel around the painting. All right, let's fast forward through this as I finish up this set of foothills before I move to the foothills on the left. Now on the left side, again, I start with a little higher chroma, and you can tell that slight difference, and I'll bring that out. So the separation between this foothill and the back, just like the other one, will be based on a little brighter color in the chroma and a little darker color as well. And so darker and brighter, heavier and brighter, and that'll stand it out and make it pull closer to the viewer. So I'm going to block in this further hillside, this medium midground hillside with that higher chroma, yellowish color. And now I'm going to start putting in some highlights here and there. Now, one of the things you're going to see me do here in a moment is I'm going to go get a different brush and kind of draw in the road. So the effect I'm trying to get is a road that starts in the foreground, goes into the first layer of the midground, and then the final layer of the midground. So way back here, I'm just using it's kind of a really dull blue color with it's a little greenish to create the illusion of that road off in the distance, climbing up that hillside. So I'm just really delicately tapping in some of that color just to mark in where that road's going to go, real careful. And so you get the illusion that the road goes from the foreground into the midground, into the frontal midground, and into the final, the back end of the midground there, where I'm painting that in right now. Again, very soft light. If you got in real close, you would see a little greenish hue to that, which is some of the same color I used in those hills in the midground. So with that blocked in, again, I don't want to overwork that. I will move on to putting some contour into the hill. Before I forget, that was a very small flat brush I used to paint in that road. It's about as small flat as you can get. I think it's like a number 2 or a 3, maybe. I don't know. It's an older brush I've had for a long time, which I really like, and for this really delicate stuff. And so everything's wore off of it. So I don't know. But so here I go, working on the hills, starting to add some contour and shape to it. Again, this is a little further forward than the hills right behind it, and you can tell by the chroma. You can see that the little brighter color pulls that hill forward and pushes the darker hills back. It's very delicate balance, especially when you have this many layers of hills, because I got another hill in front of that I got to paint, which has to be brighter, and another hill, which is the main foreground, which has to be the highest chroma features in there. So again, I enjoy this. This is fun to kind of create this contour and texture. Again, the key is do not overwork it. Stop before you're finished. Get it to where it looks half decent or okay enough, and then quit and move on. Again, if you wait till you feel like you're done, you might not ever be done. we tend to overwork our paintings. And the key to not overworking, as I've said before, and I can stress it over and over and over again, is you've got to quit before you think you're done, or you will always try to do better and always overwork it. So get comfortable with painting and walking away from it just the way it is. You can always come back later and fix it. If you think, oh, I don't like the way that looks, leave it. Especially unless you have a clear path to correcting it, leave it. You can only experiment so long until you start overworking. So, because this is an experimentation type painting where I'm going to lay down shapes and colors and see how they feel, how they look. Does it creating the illusion of the foothills I'm after? And sometimes I leave things even though I'm not happy with it, only to realize later, hey, that worked pretty well. And again, I can always go back in later. So don't overwork. Be willing to go back in later. So for this hill, I will use the same process and techniques and colors that I used on the last hill I did on the right side. So I'm going to speed this up and rip through it real quick, and then I'll zoom in on the finished hills. When I say finished, the finish for this session, I will probably come back and work on them as the rest of the painting matures. Let's take a look. All right, so here's the finished foothills, or at least for this point in the session. And now you can see how the sky and the mountain and the foothills work together. I may have to soften the edges between the mountain and the midground for the higher chroma areas on the left and on the right. We'll see about that. But for now, that'll work. And you can also see that I have gone ahead and blocked in some of the foreground things, the fence posts, the roads, rocks, and the trunks of sagebrush and trees. And so I think we're about done on this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Can't wait for you to come back and see the next video where I start working on the foreground area. So for now, this is the Big Toad, and I am out.